just been dreaming and in a garden, and there's a lion in an enclosure there, and he was very frisky because he had a female there and she couldn't get out, and he was intent, and if she jumps the enclosure, he will follow. In a strange way, I didn't fear the female so much as the male, even though, of course, his entire mind was on the female. But I said to my friend, this is set up for a disaster. We must get out of here immediately. Get out of the garden, away from the enclosure. It could turn bad fast. It's like that in persecution, you know. You're in a state that's turning from bad to worse. I don't want to, you know, I'm just saying what it was like in Rome or in any society in those days. I mean, in biblical type times. It's a frightening world. You know, people migrate because of fear and urgency. They're going they know not where, but they do know where they are is death. And they fear death. And I don't say in the dream I had some noble thoughts of God. I just knew naked fear, and we're getting out of here. Do you see? You are built with a fear of death, or a fear of danger anyway, not perhaps, if you coolly think about it, going to heaven. Goodness, I'm not afraid of that. But you're afraid of the current circumstance of something going wrong. And having realized that, and we must get out of the garden, the dream stops. And I'm thinking about it, but still in a dream mind, and then I realize I'm awake. But the vividness of the dream, these two, well, one being chased by the other, I mean, he was doing all good from his point of view, of course. He had a mate, and he was intent. But, you know, if she doesn't like it and she jumps that enclosure, he'll follow, for sure. And he's dangerous. I mean, she's probably dangerous as well, but, I mean, I didn't think of that. So you get out fast. I don't mean that the lesson is that you get out fast in danger. You simply find that's natural. You flee. It's built into you. Because in some sense you're meant to stay in this universe until you finish the lessons, and it's not necessarily now your time to leave. And that's the same reason for the taboo on suicide, of course. That, you know, oh, perhaps it's not time for you to leave. Perhaps there's a great lesson to be learned. In that case, don't take things into your own hands. But in imminent danger of pain and destruction, you flee while you can, of course. Well, that's normal. But do you see the reality in which the Gnostic Christian was living when Rome and the Roman Church took ascendance and destroyed them all, except they fled to the furthest most points of the empire or beyond, Spain and so on. Migrations are not happening because of the spirit of adventure, the longing for to roam that makes for many Irishmen to leave their native home it's famine, it's persecution, it's war, and whole peoples migrate and flee, else they get destroyed. To flee from the wrath to come was therefore a very effective phrase in belligerent, dogmatic, fundamentalist Christian theology. Hellfire was to frighten you into a conformity to the state's religion. And this is the foundation of the religion that Christianity is, and many religions. In the case of Islam, Persian manipulation from afar, that you rise up and conquer in the name of God. And it was so effective, you did. And you took great chunks of the known world in your new Muslim empire. Even Persia itself, things got out of hand from the Persian point of view. You invaded, but you invaded successfully. You didn't just weaken the hated regime. You defeated the whole country. And they embraced Islam more than your own people. And they were a fierce people already. Now they were a righteous people as well. Oh my goodness. Anything but goodness followed. Conquering hordes. I think that's not just a historicity, but in part a history of what was. I don't know. But whether it's true or not, it certainly illustrates the fierceness of the times, where whole nations would be wiped out, whole peoples, every belief system not acceptable to the current regime is exterminated. Genocide. Holocaust, we call it, don't we? It's just that amazingly it extended into the 20th and 21st century too. It's still there. It's not deep below the surface. It's still very much able to erupt at any time. I don't want to make a fuss about it from that point of view, but don't kid yourself that Christianity grew up in a pleasant garden of love and kindness that suddenly swept across Europe. On the contrary, it erupted into the most awful persecutions and violences that heralded the dark ages of over 1,000 years. And perhaps in a sense is still with us. You know, it's like the Cold War. It wasn't cold for those that were still at war. It was as terrible as the wars that supposedly had ended. for those peoples, whether it was Vietnam or Cambodia or Iraq or anywhere else. Well, it's still going on today, isn't it? We're always at war, it seems. It's a world of, I was going to say good and evil, but I focused suddenly on the evil, and I should remind myself it's a world of great good too. The love and care that we have received from time to time. An absolute light, a beacon of the way to go to life eternal. Follow it. Make up your mind to follow it. This world is not a place to keep returning to, I can tell you. And perhaps you know already. Resolve in your deepest being, I have decided to follow Jesus. Sounds childish, doesn't it? It's children that are the future of mankind. And we are the child of an eternal future by the grace and the love of God. And I had fainted had I not believed to have seen the goodness of God in the land of the living. That's a quote, of course, Old Testament. I think it's in Psalms. It's meant to be David anyway. The wisdom. I was going to say wisdom of Solomon, but I think it's the wisdom of David. Perhaps it's in Ecclesiastes, is it? You could look it up. I had fainted had I not believed to have seen the goodness of God in the land of the living. I choose to believe, for which my reward is I do not faint. And I transcend by the grace of God into his eternal loving kindness. And all whom I love, and by the grace of God with him, I love all. Therefore am I sent. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Not me alone. You too, and many. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. So as you can see from the date on this recording, it's out of time listening to it. I was in 1616 by mistake in renumbering the last recording I was doing, and I thought I was returned to it again, and I thought, well, that's strange. Second time immediately, even though I was trying to get back to where I started. Perhaps I meant to, and I listened to it, and now I've done this recording, which seems to follow it up. So that's the circumstances of this one. Be alive to leading. Know that in your heart that God is in everything, in your life especially, from your point of view, but in everything. If you're led into a certain thought, a dream, in the case of, say, the lions, or... It's funny how I've had lion before, haven't I? Not long ago I was giving a discourse on something about a lion. Strange that, I don't know why. Well, I know what it is symbolically. But to the point here, the more you are aware of God in your heart and mind, be led accordingly. And the more you're led, well, the safer and the happier you will be. Well, that's my experience anyway. And certainly it's most rational, isn't it, that it's wonderful to be in God's will, so to speak, the love of God. We're always in the love of God. We couldn't exist otherwise, but to have the confidence and the assurance of his love, I don't mean recklessness, for goodness sake, but I do mean the assurance, peace in our heart. This is interesting. What's God doing now? Wonder what he's saying in this dream or this event or this apparent happening, this apparent problem, this apparent benefit, all things. In this way, become attuned, aware of the love of God. And the love of God you will see flowering in your life, blossoming into life eternal. And you'll see the blessing it has on those around you. Not all, of course. Some react really badly and persecute you for whatever reason they do, given their view. I don't mean you can reach all. I don't mean you're going to change the world into heaven. I do mean you can be a blessing here and greatly blessed and in the kingdom of heaven already, and protected. Sanctify them by thy truth. Thy word is truth, says Jesus in John 17 in the story. Perhaps it's your story. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Love you, Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad.